welcome to TCOM 101, Ball State University. This is Dr. Mike Gerhard. Hello, and how are you today? In this short video, I want to talk about the big picture in terms of history and global history. How is society evolving? I want to talk about the evolution of something called the information society. I really believe we live in a new era of human history called the information age, and we live in an information-based society. We can see this just by looking around with the explosive growth of all kinds of digital technologies in the last few decades. We are certainly living in a computer and information age. This is all, of course, part of the great digital shift which started in the late 20th century, the rise of digital technology and computers and microchips. We live today in an information society, a society in which the exchange of information has become the predominant social and economic activity. We no longer live in a goods manufacturing industrial society. We now live in an information society. We have an information economy. The most valuable companies in the world right now are tech and information companies. The information economy has the manipulation of information at its base. So let's talk about the evolution of this information society. It should be of interest to you because you're attempting to become workers within the information society using digital technology. But let's give it some historical context and perspective. How does the information age differ from previous eras or ages in the development or historical development of our society? So I want to introduce a three-stage model of how society and the media and technology actually develop. A very simple three-stage model. Now, this idea of three stages of history was introduced by several authors in recent decades. The first of these was Daniel Bell, a sociologist. And in the 70s, he wrote a book called The Coming of Post-Industrial Society. So these were not very sexy titles, but he described the ages, the three stages, as pre-industrial, industrial, and post-industrial society. Another person who saw all of this change coming was Wilson Dysart, a communication scholar who wrote a book in the 1980s called The Coming Information Age. He used descriptive titles to describe the three stages. He talked about the agricultural age, the industrial age, and then the information age. And the same ideas were expressed by an author named Alvin Toffler, who in the 1980s wrote a book called The Third Wave. He said there were three waves of change. Basically, the first wave was the agricultural age, second wave, industrial age, third wave, the information age. The wave metaphor is nice because the waves rise sometimes slowly and fall slowly, and they overlide and they collapse, and I think it's a good metaphor. Anyway, the three major stages were the agricultural age, then the industrial age, and now today the information age. Now, if you want to understand these stages, view each stage in terms of the key economic sectors. What are the heavy industries and where are most of the people working? What's most of the labor force doing? Now, back in the agricultural age, which lasted about 8,000 years, and most of the people were engaged in extracting natural resources. The economies were based on things like farming, and so mining, timber, it was humans versus nature. Okay? So this is these agricultural economies. Resource extraction. Now there was no mass media or electronic media or computers. Everything was based on oral media, storytelling, and poetry and folk media. So in the agricultural age, all the functions of the media were performed by The folk artists, the dancers, the singers, the storytellers passed on the news and the cultural information and provided the heritage and the entertainment. And then, sometime, probably in the 1800s, we saw the shift to the industrial age. Think of the industrial age as the rise of the factories and the smokestacks and the big assembly lines and the blue-collar workers. But now work becomes much more mechanized and rational. It's no longer man versus nature. It's man versus machines. Okay, so the industrial age is all about goods manufacturing, not farming, but goods manufacturing. You know, it happens to coincide with the rise of the cities and the rise of literacy and the actual rise of mass media and advertising and the rise of pop culture are all connected to the rise of the industrial age. This is why many people migrated to the north. Poor whites and poor blacks came by the millions to the north to seek, and this was in the 20th century, to seek jobs in the industrial economy. Now, of course, there were excesses in the industrial age, things like child labor, but it did bring a lot of rising standards of living and consumer products to America and the world. But smokestacks, assembly lines, that's the industrial age. Now, if we look around the Midwest today, we call it the Rust Belt because so many of these big industrial factories have died. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost, you know, in every state in America, but especially here in the Midwest with the decline of the manufacturing economy. Now, sometime around towards the end of the 20th century, we saw the rise of the information age, and I believe we're in this era right now, where it's not farming or goods manufacturing, but information and service kinds of works. Those are the key economic activities. The information economy emerged, where the most valuable companies are information and technology companies. We've seen the incredible rise of the information infrastructure. Okay, now we've got incredible 5G smart technology emerging. So if we look around, we see the rise of all kinds of high technology devices. The information age began to emerge at the end of the 20th century, and this period is marked by the increased production, transmission, consumption, reliance on information. Most of you want to be information workers. Okay, now what evidence do we have that the U.S. has entered the information age? Well, here's some evidence I would put forth. If you look at the gross domestic product, the sum total of all the economic activity in America, more than half of the GDP can be attributed to the information sector of the economy, to the tech, computer, media, insurance, banking companies. Computers are now the number 3 industry in the United States, and that industry didn't even exist really 50 years ago. And Apple, for example, is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Microsoft, IBM. Information technology is ubiquitous. That means it's everywhere. It's hard to escape all the information technology. So we've seen the rise of these major, powerful information age companies, these giant tech companies that dominate our lives and the economy and the media landscape. More evidence that we're in the information age. Information workers far outnumber farm and factory workers now. We've seen the decline of the manufacturing sector of the economy, the death of many industries and factories. A lot of those jobs were outsourced. They were sent overseas, okay, where the companies could find cheaper labor. Also, we've seen the rise of the tech companies, the dot-coms and other technology companies that are the major players today. We've seen the incredible growth of the information infrastructure, the explosive growth of all kinds of new emerging digital technologies. We've talked about some of these: augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. Okay, so when you put all that together, it seems pretty clear we're in the information age. So information and services become the key economic activities. Now, a lot of those service jobs don't necessarily pay the best. As you know, the largest private employer in America today is Walmart. Those are service jobs. Okay, I'm sure you'd rather be, in most cases, an information worker, creating media content or working with data or information. Is information the ultimate resource? Maybe. It's unlike any other resources. All other resources seem to be finite. There's only so much gold in the ground or oil in the ground. But information has a magical quality. The more you use it, the more it expands. It keeps growing and growing and growing. So maybe it is, and everything depends on having information and knowledge. So maybe information is the ultimate resource. All right, now I want to introduce a slightly different model that argues that we're really not in the information age. What we're seeing is just an extension of the industrial age. I want to introduce a recent model that talks about something called the fourth industrial revolution. Well, what the heck is, in fact, what's the first, second, and third industrial revolutions? We've seen the rise of all kinds of advanced technology, robotics, AI, the Internet of Things, biotech, nanotechnology, smart devices. So it seems like we've actually entered a new era. Okay? And some people call this the fourth industrial revolution. The idea comes from an economist named Klaus Schwab, who's connected with the World Economic Forum. Back in 2015, Mr. Schwab introduced us to this idea of the fourth industrial revolution. So what was the first industrial revolution? That was really in the 18th and 19th centuries. It was about learning how to exploit and use steam power and water power. So this was the age of the steam engine. And that technology did transform work and industrial life here in America. What was the second industrial revolution? According to Schwab, that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. It was really the age of electricity, learning how to harness and to use electricity. And so that was the next big step in manufacturing. And of course, the electrification of our country and the world changed everything for us, our daily lives, our economics. A huge impact, electricity. The third industrial revolution happened in the 20th and is happening in the 21st century, and that's the digital revolution, the rise of computers. Okay? This started to happen really in the 1960s and 70s in the business world, and then the 80s and 90s out there in the consumer and regular business world. Okay? By the time the 20th century comes around, we're all interconnected and using computer technologies. Okay, but what's the fourth industrial revolution? What comes after the computer age? Well, it's happening now in the 21st century. And here we're talking about computer technology that transcends old traditional computers. We're talking about AI and smart technology and the rise of a bunch of new powerful forms of technology that are going to have a major change on our society. Okay? So this theory, the fourth revolution, is looking at all of the devices and the connectivity and the computer system and the AI that's being used to drive almost every aspect of our society with a special focus on manufacturing. The fourth industrial revolution is the ongoing kind of automation of traditional manufacturing and industrial practices using robots, okay, artificial intelligence, all kinds of modern smart technologies. Okay, so what are these technologies? Robotics, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, quantum computing, something we've talked about in this class, biotech, the Internet of Things, 5G, wireless connectivity, 3D printing, fully autonomous vehicles. These are all examples of smart technologies that are changing industries and our world as we know it. So there's a couple of interesting theories to chew on. The three-stage model of agricultural age, industrial age, and information age seems to make a lot of sense to me, but I also see the wisdom in the model that talks about the fourth industrial revolution. So I hope you've gotten a handle on the big picture as a result of this video. Please continue to take care of yourself and each other, and I hope to see you very soon. So long, everyone.